Okay, hi and welcome everyone. It's so exciting to have you here. It is day 2 of the Back Yourself Festival. All this week we're celebrating the launch of our brand new book, Back Yourself, and we're meeting the authors who are featured as part of our brand new book. And this morning, first up, I'm so excited to introduce you to Elle Likopoulos. Elle was our Osmompreneur of the Year for Victoria this year. So we are so excited and delighted to have her presenting. Hi, Elle, how are you?
Hi, Peace. I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share with all the lovely ladies, and hopefully today can be just as good as yesterday was.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm really looking forward to your session today. So we'll let you do your presentation, and then at the end we'll have some time for questions.
Awesome.
Does that sound good?
Okay, perfect. I'll get started.
Yep, take it away. Thanks, Elle.
So guys, today I wanted to talk to you about creating the rules to your own game, which is basically the key to winning in business and appearing like you have it all. I get told so many times by various different people, oh, how do you have it all? You seem to be getting everything done. You seem to be coping so well. And the answer is really quite simple. And that is that I play by my own rules. And when you play by your own rules, it becomes really easy to win at the game, basically. So I want to teach everybody a few tips on how I did that and how to be able to apply that in your own life in a way that would suit your family and lifestyle so that you can also have it all. A little bit about myself so that I can introduce you all to who I am and what my background is. I am a mum of 4 kids under 10, including 2 little twins that are turning 2 in a few weeks, actually. And I also run Absolute Business Brokers, which is a leading business brokerage company in Victoria. We're basically like real estate agents, but we sell businesses and goodwill. I am one of the first females in my industry that has been top selling agent consecutively for, I think it's 6 years now, but who's counting? And I was the first person to be invited in Australia from the business broking industry to speak in China for Chinese visa migrants looking at investing in small business here on shore. My industry was very heavily male dominated. It still, to a large degree, is. And I'm very proud to say that I pioneered through Absolute Business Brokers to pave a way for women to be able to enter the industry and feel comfortable to do so. And Absolute Business Brokers is now mostly women in a ratio of women to men. And we are actually the only business broker company in Australia to be more female, which is something I'm very, very proud of. So today we want to address requiring flexibility in the workforce, which is something I think that has become more of a topic of conversation after everyone has been sent to working from home in the pandemic. And we've realized how outdated working 9 to 5 really is. And I always like to reference and say, working 9 to 5 is as outdated as the Dolly Parton song itself. And it's really quite true, because the 9 to 5 working schedule was created by a man and for men, because back then when that sort of timetable was created, it was under the impression that it was for the male working individual, and there was a caregiver at home full-time that was able to take care of the kids, take care of the household, get all the bills and errands paid for and sorted. And there was that male individual that would work for 8 hours and then come home and everything would be sorted. In today's society, that really isn't the case. And there's a number of reasons why that's not the case. Number one, women have fought very hard to be able to have choice. And those of us who want to work and feel that we can contribute have the right to do so. And it's a lot easier than it used to be. 2, it's not always a male and female household. We have same-sex marriage. We have people of the same sex that live together and have a family unit. So that idea of the traditional family, we've evolved from that. So that's another reason why the whole idea of the woman staying home and the man going to work is so outdated. And thirdly, something that I think we've all come to realize in the pandemic is cost of living is really expensive. It's really, really difficult for two people in a household with kids to have one person stay home. Buying a house, it's not cheap these days. Saving up to get a deposit, being able to pay for the mortgage, you're really struggling if you're only having one income come through. And so women or the caregivers are really being pushed to consider having that extra income stream coming in to support the family. But working 9 to 5 won't be able to cut it, because you need to be able to drop your kids off in the morning and you need to be able to pick them up. And how many of us have been ready to go to work on a Monday morning? We have a whole list of things we need to do. We've stayed up the night before to organize our meeting and how it's all going to plan. And you go to wake up little Jackson and he's got a cold and a fever. What do? We've all had that juggle where we're speaking to our partner in a panic. You're late for school, you're late to get out of the house, and you're thinking, what are we doing with Jackson? We can't take him to daycare. Your grandma is busy. You can't find a babysitter. Who's going to juggle him around? And one of you are going to probably have to stay home. And that usually is what we've been seeing, the burden of the mum having to most of the time stay home and take that on. It's really hard to call your employer and say, you know what, I can't come in today. And that unfortunately reflects on how reliable you are and affects the chance of you being able to be promoted and the chance of you to be able to be considered like all the other peers in your team, essentially. So what I found was the easiest way to overcome it, because it's going to take a lot of time to be able to educate employers around the idea of you don't necessarily have to work 9 to 5 and you can have structured hours, which is what I'm hoping we're going towards after we saw how well working from home actually worked out and how productive it was for a lot of people. The only other option until that happens is to actually make a change within yourself while your children are still young, or while you do need to be a caregiver at least 60% more than your partner is, because there's always going to be that one person that has to take on a little bit more. And I found the best way to do that was owning your own business. And actually, a lot of people seem to have found that, because the data that ASIC has recently released has shown that this year more businesses have been registered than any other year recorded in the last 20 years. So it seems to be quite a large trend and movement that people are saying, hang on, I need a second income, or I've been laid off, or when JobKeeper ends, I'm probably going to be laid off or my hours cut down. So I need some sort of an income to secure. And I really liked working from home. What are the chances my boss is going to let me do this permanently? For a lot of people, unlikely. I was able to get so much done. I'm not a failure. I'm actually able to get things sorted, and I've got so many ideas, and it's given the opportunity for people to see what they're capable of, even though they don't have to necessarily be physically present in an office from 9 to 5. And that love that you've had and passion that you've had all this time, when the boss is sending you an email saying, guys, we're getting back to work on Monday, and you're trying to think, oh God, what do we do with Jackson again? Starting your own business is a no-brainer. And it's scary, I know. So I'm going to share a few tips on what to do, what not to do, what to consider, because at the end of the day in my career, that's all I've been seeing. And I've seen successful businesses. I've seen businesses that haven't done so well. I've seen it all. So I'm here to share a lot of experience that would be impossible for one individual to get in a lifetime. First thing is, don't try to fit in. Starting your own business is the beginning to making your own rules for success. And what I mean by that is, all too many times I've seen first-time buyers doubt themselves and doubt their abilities and try and follow, well, what everyone else is doing, or what does everyone else think the business I should start or I should buy should look like. That's never a good way to go about it, because the whole reason that you're looking to start your own business is because you want to back yourself, and you know within yourself that you have more to give and you've got more potential. If you buy a business that's in an industry or a model that somebody else has put upon you, you're really just being an employee again, because you're working for that business. It's not something that's organically part of you or something that fits and molds within your lifestyle and your desires and your ideas. And a lot of, I saw yesterday, there's a number of us that have actually been describing this and talking about it in different ways, depending on our background and our perspective. But it really is all about doing what you're passionate about. Don't let other people guide you into telling you what you should do or what they think you're good at doing, because ultimately you know best. And the little voice in your head that sometimes tells you, oh no, you wouldn't be good at that, or oh no, you don't know anything about that, switch it off. Switch it off, because you don't know until you try. All I can tell you, with years of experience, having seen people battle with that little voice and sometimes not listening to it and taking the popular route, they fail. Ultimately, they always fail. You cannot invest in a business that is not second nature to you, or that it's not something that you're passionate about. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to get into something that you know about. It could be something that you've always wanted to do, but you've just never had the opportunity to do so, or it's never been an idea that was really practical for you to do at the time. If you, for example, wanted to buy a cafe, never owned a cafe in your life, but you like the idea of it, you like that interaction, the timetable fits with your family, my suggestion would be try and get a job in a cafe. Try and become a waitress for a little bit. Even ask to volunteer. I know it's really difficult during this time for people to employ new staff. Ask to volunteer and help out in the kitchen, learning how to make coffees, learning how to serve, and see if it really does fit with what you envisioned it would be and what it really is. And learn from the best. Do that for as long as you can, with a number of different cafes that you look at and admire or think, yep, that's really similar to what I want to do, and put yourself in those shoes. It's far better to volunteer and put yourself in that position and essentially work for free than it is to spend $50,000 to $100,000 and buy one and realize, hey, this isn't for me. And that's something that unfortunately a lot of people don't consider. It's one thing imagining it, it's very different to actually be in that position and see it from all the different perspectives of what it actually takes to run that business. And you can do that across different industries when you start thinking about it and you start talking to people about volunteering, or even starting to talk to some people that are within that industry and asking the raw questions of, what time do you really get in? What time do you come home? How many hours do you spend after that looking at emails or contacting suppliers? These are all things that you need to factor in. Running your own business is very flexible. It is an opportunity for you to be able to do a lot more things. But at the end of the day, you need to remember that there is still time involved that you need to put in it. And if it's something that you love, you don't really count that time. If somebody asks me how many hours do I spend in my business, it's probably a lot more than 39 hours, but it doesn't feel like work to me, because when I'm researching, when I'm speaking to people, when I'm answering emails, it's things I love to do. I actually enjoy it. And when you create something that you enjoy, it's life-changing, because you no longer count your hours. And that's what you really need to get into a position to do, because if you buy a business and you're counting your hours, or it's not organically the right fit, you may as well have stayed with your boss. So I think we've all seen this sort of diagram before, but it really does put it in perspective. And this year has been a big learning curve for all of us of where our comfort zone is and where the magic happens. I think no matter who we are or what our background is, we have all been tested and have come out of our comfort zone in one way or another, where it be homeschooling, working from home, rearranging staff, pivoting our business. And I think at this time of year, we've seen that as hard as it can be, as many sacrifices and struggles we have to go through, there really is beauty on the other side. And there really is this sense of achievement when you can look back and say, at that moment, I had no idea what I was doing. I can remember feeling the tight knot in my throat, wondering what's going to happen. But look at me now. And there is such a sense of achievement that nobody can describe until you've actually been in that position, that to be honest, you almost get addicted to, and you thrive off that adrenaline. And that's what happens to successful business people. And when you look at entrepreneurs that have been really successful in life, you will note a common factor is they are addicted to that sense of adrenaline and rush of overcoming a fear or overcoming an obstacle. And that's what we really need you to get into, because the very first time you do it is terrifying, and it can really take a long process to actually take that jump and make it happen. But once you do it once, it becomes a lot easier. You just sometimes need to close your eyes and take that jump. Don't build your business based on trends. Now, this is very similar to what I was saying earlier in regards to don't listen to people about what you think your business should be. But this is after you've actually found out what your concept or idea is. So I'll use the example that I talked about in my chapter, which is in COVID, I saw a lot of event planners and people in the event industry turning into supplying grazing boxes, which was a fantastic idea. And I was really impressed with how quickly some industries that were totally shut were able to pivot and able to use their customer base into still generating an income. But there's trends that are really popular and important, and it's a good way to make a quick shoot in income, but they're not long-term and they can't withstand an entire business model. And I can give you examples of how I've seen that happen. For example, the macaron franchise trends, where everyone invested hundreds and thousands of dollars for those little pop-up stores in the shopping centers that sell macarons. Prior to that, it was the cupcakes. You know, so many people spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these trends. By the time the trend gets there and you've invested all this money, they get over it, they move on to something else. What happens to these little pop-up stalls? What happens to these little franchises? You really are not able to pivot all that much. If you're a cupcake stall in the middle of a shopping center, you really can't do too much more. And that's something that you need to think about when you're looking into your idea or buying into a business. We had something locally that was a fantastic concept. It was a beautiful business, but all they did was make crepes. And as a business broker, when I see ideas like that, I think that's fantastic. Everyone's going to want to try it. But how many times are you going to eat crepes during the week that will allow this business to have repeat business, to be able to afford to pay the rent week in, week out, and to be able to pay the overheads? You have to try and look at how often are people going to keep coming back, and repeat customer is what you want. Not just the idea of, hey, everyone's doing this, what do you think, to your girlfriends? And they say, oh yeah, we love that, we will definitely do it. But how many times will you do it? And that's really quite important. Rather than using a trend to start your business, think about using values. And going back to the grazing boxes as an idea, that's all fine. Grazing boxes was a great trend. It was popular, everyone was doing it. But as a point of difference, your values might be supporting local. So think about making that the undertone of what your business model is, and putting all locally sourced produce in that grazing box with little cards to talk about where these products come from, who the farmers or producers are behind it, and making that sort of the undertone of what the trend is. Because then when grazing boxes go, you've paved the way to allow yourself to be able to support local in different ways, and you've got different paths open that you can move through to. So it's always really important you think about your foundations and the values to build that identity. And then the trends are just like outfits. You can change them all the time, but they're not what actually defines what your brand is all about. And that's just a really going off a 4-step brand value proposition that you would probably go through with a business coach, or if you've done, any marketing courses or business management courses. But essentially, we're looking at following those 4 steps, which is discover what matters, values and interests, know your customers and competitors. Are you having a point of difference? Is it something that will appeal to the market? For example, we all know #support local has been really popular. A lot of customers would like that. How many people are doing that idea with the grazing boxes and putting the local businesses and little cards about what they belong to? Have a look to make sure you're not copying anyone. Stand for something. You might want to put some proceeds towards helping a particular business or industry, and stay consistent. If you're going to have an undertone, that needs to actually be the base note for anything that you do moving on in the future. Starting a business or buying a business can be a money pit. And this is where it can become tricky, because I've spoken to a lot of people that have said, oh, I'd love to buy a business. I've always wanted to be a florist. I love arranging flowers, but I don't have that kind of money right now. And during this period where we've all hopefully come through a pandemic and, we're on the other side and on the road to recovery, spending tens of thousands can be a little bit daunting, especially when you are the main caregiver, because it's in our nature as nurturers to want to give to our family. So when you start thinking about $50,000 or $30,000 to invest in yourself and your idea, you feel a bit guilty and you think, oh, but you know what, the family really could do with a holiday. We need that money for holiday, or we need that money for a second car, or we need that money for braces. And they're all important things. But I'm here to tell you that the needs list never goes away. There is always something that is going to be needed, but you also have needs. And the idea of being a martyr mum, where we don't put our feelings and our needs on that family list of what the household needs, has to stop. Because think about it in another way. And when I say this to people, they go, do you know what? You're so right. This business is going to make money. This isn't, you're spending $30,000 to buy a handbag. This is you paying this kind of money to create a business and to create a future where a second income stream is going to go back into your family. So essentially, what you're doing every time you block that and you say, no, we need to go on a holiday, or we need braces or whatnot, is you're blocking your family from that second income stream. Sometimes it might even be a third income stream, because it could be a passive income, which is what we call in the industry an income where you can still have potentially your part-time job or full-time job. Your partner also has the same. And this is just something that you do in the afternoon, or it's run by staff. And it's just that extra little income where you might put the money towards little luxuries as a bonus for the end of the year for the family. So you have to ask yourself, am I stopping my family from having that opportunity? And the answer is yes. And when you look at it that way, you realize that it's actually not selfish for you to spend that money and back yourself into a business. It's actually rather selfish that you're not doing it and that you're choosing to spend it elsewhere, because ultimately the reason you're talking yourself out of it is because you're scared and you're doubting yourself and you're worried about spending that kind of money because there's no guarantee it'll work. And that's what it really comes down to at the end of the day. There is no one that can turn around to you and say, this is 100% going to work and you're going to get X amount return on your investment in this many years or in this many months. Nobody can give you those answers. Whereas working for a boss, you know, if you do 39 hours or 30 hours, you're going to get X amount per hour. This is what your pay slip is going to say. You know that, you can anticipate that. Doesn't happen in small business, doesn't happen when you're your own boss. And you need to prepare yourself for that and come to terms with it and be confident that at the end of the day, everything revolves around you and your control. So really, when people turn and say, oh, small business, when you're your own boss, is not secure, I say, What can be more secure than having to back yourself? I don't have to answer to anyone. I'm not an employee where I come to work one day and my boss at any given time can take me aside and say, your position is no longer available, or we can't afford to give you the same hours that we did. I have no idea when that conversation would come as an employee. And we've all probably seen that or heard about that during the pandemic. As your own boss, you know exactly what's coming, and it's in your control what happens next. What more security do you want than being the person behind the steering wheel? That's how you have to look at it. Know your best asset. Now, this one, guys, I have a little confession to make. It is very, very, very difficult to put yourself first, especially when you're a mum, especially when you have made the decision to invest in a business. At the beginning, it's not glamorous. You will spend a lot of hours researching, a lot of hours looking at what you're going to do next, building your brand, getting your customer base, finding the right staff or assistants. It is a lot of hours. And even when you're not physically working in the business, your mind is always on your business. You start to go for a walk and you see a color and you think, oh, that would be fantastic to introduce that into our logo, or that picture would be great to use on Instagram. And everything in the world, in the weirdest way possible, starts to reflect back to your business. And only when you're a business owner do you know what I mean. But when it happens to you, you'll know it all becomes about your business, because it's something that you're growing. You're growing it from scratch, or you're growing it from base levels. And your family, essentially, for that period, does somewhat take a back seat. And this is the tug of war that we always talk about between family and work. Priority shift. There are going to be situations where your business requires your attention and the business will take priority. That doesn't make you a bad mother. That doesn't make you a bad wife. It is simply your priorities will move. Think about if you have more than one child. I have 4, for example. My son last week broke his arm, my eldest. My priority was at that particular time to take care of my son, have to help him have a bath, have to help him get into bed. So I gave him more attention than I did the other children, because they necessarily didn't need that kind of level of help. Or when the twins were really small, I'd give them more attention and care than what the older boys needed, because they were at different stages of development. That doesn't mean I don't love my other children. And that doesn't mean that I'm not being a good mother to all my children. It simply means that you're obviously focusing your attention where it's needed. Exactly the same thing happens with your business or your career. If your business needs you right then and there, and your family is okay and stable, you are not a bad mum for focusing on where you need to focus. At the end of the day, like I said, this business, this investment is for your family and their future. So you're really just doing what you have to do to give your children more options, more financial security, and more ability to go on those holidays, more ability to have a happy Christmas and not have to worry about, am I going to have a job when JobKeeper ends? Am I going to have that security? Can I enroll my child in private school? Will I be able to pay those fees for the next, 10 or 15 years? All these things is what you're working towards. So that tug of war game in your mind needs to stop, and you're the only one that can control that. The best asset in your business will and always will be you, because you are the one behind your business. And I've struggled with this concept because when I first started, because I was in a male-dominated industry where nobody else had the issues that I had, nobody else had sick kids that they had to stay home and take care of, nobody else had to pop out because they couldn't work late because they had to tuck children into bed. I was the only one that was going through all that. So I ended up working harder than everybody else to try and prove myself. I worked weekends, I worked nights. There wasn't a period where I wasn't working, and I tried to fit it in every moment that I had. I would be in the shower and I would be thinking about my emails. I would go to the toilet and I would be trying to answer emails. At one point, and I'll never forget this, I went into the toilet to have a minute, and my phone died. And the guilt that I felt for those moments that I was in the toilet and not actually utilizing that time to answer emails was a light bulb moment for me to think, this is a basic human right. Why on earth am I feeling guilty that I haven't fit in work? And that's when I realized I am failing at this tug of war and this balance. I am not balancing anything. I am burning myself out. And I was hospitalized several times for exhaustion and dehydration. I was always sick. I always had the sniffles. I always had a lingering cough that wouldn't go away. And it was because I was working on zero fumes of fuel. And you can't sustain that. And it's not going to be long term. Not until I was forced to take care of my body and think of myself because I went through the process of IVF for the twins did I realize the damage I was doing. Because when I was going through that process with the twins, I started to take care of my body because it was a vessel for my babies. And that's when I slowed down at work. That's when I started eating well, sleeping well. And I was prepared to think, you know what, I'm going to take a step back. My business will suffer, but that's okay. I've allowed for that. For 1 year, it's going to be a little down. No problem. I'll recover when I've had my children. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, and I calculated for. Do you know, after that year, when I came back into the office and I went through it with my accounts team, I actually had more sales than I had in my history, in my entire career. I sold more businesses and had more productivity working from home, very minimal hours, than I ever did before. And I was in shock, and I asked them to check and recheck the numbers because first of all, I wasn't tired. I didn't even feel like I worked that much. I was sort of thinking, oh, are you sure? I didn't work. When did I do all this? But the reality is I did. And I did it because I delegated, which I've seen a lot of ladies are talking about, and it is the key to success. And it takes a long time to work it out and let go of that need to control everything. But once you work it out, it is fantastic. I delegated, I stepped back, and I allowed myself time to have a clear head. And when you have a clear head and you're working at optimum capacity, you actually are able to do a lot more. Think about it like a vehicle. If you have a race car and you've never serviced it, you've never checked the oil, you just keep burning it out, don't replace the tires, just keep going and use it like a farm ute, it's not going to win any race. But if you have it in pristine condition, check everything, constantly give it the service that it needs, that love and attention, then it becomes a really good tool for you to win that race. And that's exactly what you are. You are an asset to this business. So it's crucial that you schedule me time. And what I mean by that, I have a calendar where I have my work appointments, and in there, I schedule my appointments that are for myself. And I put them in there, and I invite all my assistants and my staff so that they know that is an appointment, and I treat it as such. If somebody needs to see me, I will not reschedule. This took a lot of time for me to get into the habit of, so I'm not preaching and expecting you to do it straight away, but when you get there, trust me, it is life-changing. You don't alter that appointment. You never reschedule on clients. You never cancel on business meetings. It's a business meeting. Your Pilates is important. I always went through the habit of saying, oh, I'm going to do 11 a.m. Pilates. And then a client would call me and say, oh, can you meet me at 10:30? Yeah, sure, that's not a problem. And I would just ignore it and cross it out and put my client in. Only now have I said, you know what, I've actually got something at 11, so I can't see you then. How about 1? Believe it or not, they say, sure. Or if they can't do it, they'll find another time. You don't always have to say yes and sacrifice yourself. If somebody wants to see you, if somebody wants to do business with you, they will find a time. And sometimes it's not always good to get in the habit of constantly making yourself available, because that habit will never end. And that's the reputation you will have. And as you get bigger and you have more business and more clients to deal with, it becomes near impossible to please everybody. So don't get in the habit of being a yes man. I also allocate time for my children so that I don't feel guilty. I have playtime at 5:30 to 6:30. I have in my calendar, for example, today that with my second child, I'm going to sit and watch him play Fortnite. I'm doing nothing else. I'm eating chips and I'm on his beanbag and I'm watching him play Fortnite. And I've put that in my schedule so that whilst I'm doing that, I don't feel guilty because I'm exactly where I should be. That's what my schedule said. That's what I've allowed for. And that's what I've worked around the entire day. Just like if I had a meeting with a supplier or a client, if something happened along the way, I would still honor that meeting and handle whatever else happened afterwards. Treat it the same way. Of course, if there is some big emergency or something has gone wrong and you need to be there, well, in the same sort of idea and concept, you would reschedule meetings in that situation as well. There's room for rescheduling, but don't get in the habit of it. Commit to it. And it makes you a better mum, a better boss, a better wife, a better person, because you're calm and you're not guilty and you're not apologizing all the time for being you. And you don't turn around at the end of the week and say, did I spend enough time with the kids? Did I spend enough time with my husband? Because you've got it all there in a schedule. You've allocated it nice and calmly the Sunday before, and you've given everyone fair time, and you've given yourself fair time. You've given yourself the opportunity to go to Pilates. You've given yourself the opportunity to get your nails done. You will do far more when you allocate different sections of your life. I know it sounds clinical, but at the beginning, until you start getting into the habit of naturally doing it, it's really important you do so. I always used to say at first, oh, look, I would try it, and then halfway through, because I'm not a very organized person, I would sort of forget the calendar and not look at it or do my own thing. Not until I started following it religiously did I start seeing the difference and feel the difference. And now I can sort of cheat because I've been doing it so long that it's become habit. So I don't necessarily have to put every little detail into my calendar, but I've already trained myself to have that habit. So until you train yourself to have the habit where you can put your phone away, you can put everything away and sit for an hour and watch your child play Fortnite or play Play-Doh without any thoughts of your business in your mind, then you need to use that system, because you need to be present in everything that you do. And a great movie that puts that all into perspective is the Adam Sandler movie, Click. I don't know whoever has seen it, but if you've got some spare time, put it on with the kids if your kids are a little bit older. It really does make you put things into perspective, that sometimes we're on this hamster wheel and we forget to actually enjoy the moment. Every little moment counts. And the business is not the be all and end all. Everything together is what makes your life. Which brings me to the idea of don't catch feelings. And in my chapter, I talk about how business is not necessarily your baby, how we all talk about business. It's more like a toxic, bad relationship you just can't stop or get rid of. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at a business, yes, it's a lot like having a baby. You nurture it, you see it grow, you take care of it, it starts establishing its own personality and its own life, and you're so proud of it. When you have this business, you go through different development stages with it. You see the world in a different way. It's very, very much like being a parent. It's exhausting and rewarding, and all those emotions very much mimic what it is like to be a parent for the first time. However, the difference with a business is it's not going to be forgiving, and it's not something that you need to always make excuses for. Sometimes a business can be like dating a guy that you dated in high school or in uni. And if you haven't had this experience, I'm sure you have a girlfriend that you can relate to that's had that experience. There's that guy where you're the one that puts more effort in that relationship. You're the one that's always trying to work around them. You're the one that has that faith of, oh, they've got the potential. He's like this, but, if you spend a little bit more time, or if you spoke to him in a different way, he can be really sweet. He does have the potential, and you're constantly making excuses to your friends about him. And when you try and weigh up the pros and cons, he's really not giving you that much in return to how much you're investing in it, but you just can't stop dating him. You're just attached to him. You've invested too much time. You're too embarrassed to tell your friends it didn't work out because you've backed him and spoke about him too much now, and you're just stuck. And a business can be like that. And it's important to know that just because you're dating doesn't mean that they're the one. And the same concept applies for business. You can start a business today or tomorrow, and it could be fantastic for that period in your life. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that you're going to grow old and die with this business. It might not be the one. It might be the one for right now. Unfortunately, in my industry and in my career path, I've seen too many people be blinded for what their business really is or what their business has become. And they forget that this is an investment, and it's supposed to make you money, and it's not supposed to be something that you make excuses for. And they go down with the ship. And what I mean by that is, if the business isn't profitable, if you've tried everything and it's not working, and everyone around you, your solicitors, your accountants, they're telling you that, look, you know, your forecast is showing that this isn't going in the right way, and, you know, you're deaded up to your ears and you can't really paddle any longer, there is no point in just staying in there or trying to put value on the business based on how much work you've done. How much work you've done, unfortunately, doesn't equate to monetary value for a business. And if you're making excuses for your business, then you need to really step back and think to yourself, what is this business doing for me? What were the reasons why I established this business? How much money was I hoping to make from this business? How much did I invest in this business? And clinically map it out in numbers where your business lies. And take the rose-colored glasses off, because it's not a reflection of you as a person if you come to the conclusion that this business no longer works or this business has failed. Successful business people, if you look at any successful business person, pick any name that you want, and you look through their history, they have had more failures than success, because it only takes one time to be successful, and that's all you need. But you're going to need several losses and fails for you to learn from and for you to get to that. Some people are really lucky and they only have 1 or 2 failures before they reach success. Very few actually don't have any failures and then reach success, but who's to say that they might not reach it later on? I don't think it's possible to be in business and not have some kind of failure, and that's what you learn from. And you need to be open and prepared for that, and you need to understand that just like that relationship in high school or in uni, it's not a reflection on you, and you're not a failure if this relationship is no longer giving you what you wanted or is no longer a suitable fit. And I don't think that we talk about that enough, because we're always talking about success and try harder. And, you know, if you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you'll get somewhere. And the more you try and the more resilient you are, you will, you know, get what you want. And the ultimate reality is you can do all that, but there are sometimes external factors or financial factors that mean that it's not in your control anymore. And the best thing that you can do is understand that and move to a different concept, or sell and move on, or change the idea and walk away. And it doesn't mean you weren't resilient enough. It doesn't mean you didn't pivot enough. It doesn't mean you didn't get out of your comfort zone enough. And that's something that I think everybody needs to understand before they enter into business, because the likelihood of getting it right the first time isn't always there. So that's me, guys. I hope I've given you some insight. Please feel free to ask me any questions. I'm happy to help. Any sort of questions or ideas you want to run past me, I'm happy to give you my honest insight. And don't forget, you can read a little bit more about what I've talked about today and some more examples of how you can avoid some pitfalls in the book Back Yourself, which is available for pre-order now.
Thank you so much, Elle. That was an incredible session.
Thanks. I hope you guys all enjoyed it.
It was so good. So Elle, I loved, there was so much in that, so many messages. And, oh, hang on, what have I done? There we are. Okay. And your story about burnout was just really, really hit home for me. You've been hospitalized numerous times, and you know, you found yourself feeling guilty that your phone went flat while you were in the toilet because you weren't answering enough emails. Like, that is intense, but I also know that it's something that lots and lots of other women can completely relate to, that they feel like they have to be working all the time. Otherwise, they're not doing the best by their clients.
Absolutely. And I think technology has a lot to answer for in that sense, because in previous generations to ours, I mean, I remember not ever having a phone, not having a computer. And when you left the office, that was it. You had no access to anything else. Unfortunately now, the office or work never leaves us because it's right here in our hand. And no matter where we go, it's there and notifications pop up. So it has to be a conscious decision within yourself to allocate time to switch off. And there's ways you can do that. You know, you can use on your phone the option to shut down certain apps at a certain time. And then when you try and go in it warns you, this is time to shut down. Are you sure you want to break your own rule? And things like that. But ultimately, as I say in my chapter, you can get as many self-help books as you want. You can appoint as many coaches as you want. You can do all of that. There will be no change until you in yourself understand that you don't need to have that guilt and you shed those feelings. And that's where it ultimately comes down to. I talked about it with my son the other week, actually, because he was running for school captain. And he said to me, Mum, I'm really nervous about speaking in public. And I said, well, why are you nervous about speaking in public? And he said, well, I'm really embarrassed. What if I don't do the right thing, or I stuff up on my words and people laugh at me? And I said, nobody can make you feel embarrassed, because embarrassment is an emotion that you can control. So if you simply don't feel embarrassment and you don't have that emotion, then nothing that anybody does to you can actually make you feel that way. And it's the same concept with guilt. Nobody can make you feel guilty. If you don't allow guilt to come into mind, then nobody can do it. It's not a physical thing. It's not like a hat that I will place on your head, therefore you're wearing a hat. If I turn around to you and say, Peace, you know, you're a really crappy employee. You didn't read those emails that I sent you at 8 o'clock at night. It's up to you whether you want to wear that guilt or not. It's not something physical that I'm placing on you. It's up to you to block me out. And a lot of the times you'll find that nobody is saying these things. The voices within us are saying these things. We are our own worst critic. There were periods when I first got pregnant where my obstetrician said to me, if you don't get off your phone and if you don't stop stressing out, because I was getting high blood pressure, I'm going to hospitalize you. And that's the only way you're going to relax. And it's not going to be fun for you because you're not going to be around with your kids and you're not going to have any control as to how much work you can do. Whereas now I'm just telling you to slow down. And I thought about it and I said, you know what? I was so worried at first that it's 2 o'clock. Someone sent me an email. I didn't reply within 2 hours. I always replied within 2 hours. And slowly I thought to myself, why don't I take 24 hours for some of them to reply to? I screen them and I see what's important and what's not. And if it's something that's not quite important, what would happen if I took 24 hours? Do you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. If you are on your emails every day and you are answering, you will get replies. And you will find that if you had 200 emails in your inbox at 9 a.m., you will probably go home with 300 in your inbox, and you've done so many back and forth. So you need to learn to switch off, because if you're striving for an empty inbox, it won't happen.
Yeah, so true. So true. Can you tell us about some of the boundaries that you do have in place to ensure that you don't work continuously?
Well, one of the new ones that I've introduced through having to be homeschooling with 4 children at home is that I've taken away working from my phone. I used to be a serial phone worker. I'm constantly just looking at my phone and answering emails and checking it. I made a conscious decision that I will work on my desktop, and I answered emails on my desktop and use that time only for work. Whereas if you're using your phone, your screen time can end up being ridiculous hours because you'll answer an email and then you'll use your pacifier and scroll through Instagram. It was a bit of a stressful email, so you just need to start mindlessly scrolling. And before you know it, you've spent 3 hours and you haven't really done too much. Whereas if you're on your desktop, it's business mode, you answer what you need to answer, and then you go to your children. And I've reduced my screen time, and I've made it like a game because I'm very competitive to see how much I can reduce my screen time. I'm down to 58 minutes a day average. So I'm really proud of that because I was the sort of person that had crazy amounts of hours. I think at one point I got 15 hours a day. And it was just like, at what point do you spend with your kids? And at what point are you really actually there? Because I was still doing the housework. I was still watching a movie with my husband. I was still with my children, but I wasn't really there because I was doing this and I was, on my phone. So that's one of the boundaries that has made a big difference. Another big one is that I have cut-off times. After 8 o'clock, I won't think about business. I won't answer my phone, which took a long time for me to get to that habit. I just want to point out these aren't things that you're going to read the book or you're going to listen to this workshop and then you're cured and you've got everything under control. It will take time. And depending on your industry, different hours and different boundaries will apply to you. But for me, I found that it was okay to switch off at 8 o'clock. And actually after that time, I wasn't really doing anything that productive. I was just feeding my guilt of needing to constantly keep going. It's a bit like when you're on the treadmill and you're running for an hour and then you jump off, your legs feel kind of funny and you feel like you're kind of running, but you're not. It's exactly the same thing with work. If you've been in that pattern of constantly working from your phone or you're, answering emails subconsciously, essentially, then when you stop doing that first period you do, you're thinking, oh, this feels weird. And you sort of start feeling like you forgot something, like I was meant to be doing something. The reality is you weren't meant to be doing anything. It's just that you're not used to having that clarity, having that minute where you're actually in the moment.
Yeah. Amazing. So I was just wondering whether anyone else has questions for Elle, questions or comments who can relate to her story and what she's saying. We've had some things in the chat. I'm just wondering if anyone wanted to unmute and jump in. Hi,
how you going?
Good.
I can speak from experience with everything Elle has said, as I'm actually working for Elle at the moment, and definitely a great role model in everything that she has said and trying to get things set up. It's just about taking the right balance and, as she said, tuning out when you need to.
I think it's really important, and I was just reading some of the comments there as well. We have this idea, and I noted something when I was looking into this, when I was writing my chapter and when I was really sort of asked to reflect on what advice I would give and looking into the modern working mum. And one common thing that I found is we all answer our emails with, sorry for the late reply. Or we all answer with, sorry, I didn't get back to you earlier, or sorry, I can't make that time. Can we do another time? We use the word sorry quite a lot, and we're always apologizing, and it's in our mind and it comes out without us even realizing in our emails. We don't need to apologize. You answering an email late or you not being able to make a certain time is fine. You don't have to be available for everyone at every given situation. If you start consciously looking at emails, as I do now, and see that most women somewhere in the email will apologize at some point, and then you compare it with men, you hardly ever see sorry written in an email from men. Why is that? Why aren't they apologizing and we feel that we have to? It's not a gender thing anymore. Like I said earlier, we're in the 21st century, we're in the modern world where there are same-sex relationships and households. So why is it that we're still holding on to this guilt as women that we have to fit into a certain mold or do a certain thing so that when we don't do it, we're apologizing for it? The gender idea needs to go, and the whole world is in agreement with that. But I think the number one thing that is stopping us is ourselves. We aren't able to let it go. We are so traumatized by what we have gone through for generations and how much we have fought so that we can have choice and we can be seen as equals, that we are our own worst enemies, and we are the ones that are setting the standard by saying things like, I'm sorry, I can't make it, or I'm sorry, I have to take, Cecile to ballet, or whatever it might be. You don't need to apologize. And that's little things like that. If we can start doing small habits, that we can start reinforcing our position and our feet firmly on the ground and be confident within ourselves, will make a difference. You can never control the outside. You can never control how someone's going to think. There are still people that think that women can't do certain things. There are still people that are going to tell you that your business idea is crap. There are people that are going to tell you, oh, you can't do that. You've got screaming kids everywhere. You can't even put the laundry away. How are you going to run a business? You're going to have all these people talk. It is up to you what hat you're going to wear, what part of that you're going to take in, if anything. It's your life. And I think it's really important that we understand that we don't have to answer to anybody, and that we have fought very hard for this moment to have choice. And I'm not apologizing to anyone. And if you make a business decision and it doesn't work, it didn't fail because you're a mum. It didn't fail because you're a woman. It failed because it was just going to fail. That's what happens sometimes. And it's no reflection on you. You learn, you pick up whatever you can, and you keep going. You move on to the next project.
Elle, such an important message that you're sharing today. Really, so much gold in everything you're saying, and something that I think women everywhere need to hear.
Absolutely. And it's not just women that want to start their own business. I mean, at the moment, if you're looking for that flexibility of hours, I was saying with my staff the other day, in our workplace, we're very flexible with our hours because I wanted to make an environment where I allowed people to have their max capacity and ability to give to the business. So if you need to pop out to pick up your child from school, you can pop out, pick up your child from school, come back if you can come back. If your child is sick, but not too sick, but just at the point where they don't want to go into school, they might have hay fever or something like that, pre-COVID, you can bring your child into the office if they're not contagious and it's safe to do so, if you still want to come into work. Because there has been situations, I know from myself, where my son has had really bad hay fever. There was nothing wrong with him, but I had to stay home because I wasn't able to bring him into the office. I didn't want to stay home. I had work to do. And I didn't want to be stuck at home thinking, oh my God, it's going to pile up tomorrow. I'm going to have so many emails. Susie from the desk across is going to be death staring me because she had to stay back to cover. You don't want to be doing all that. If you could have a workplace where you could have that flexibility and speak to your boss, I think it's really important that people understand that just because you're not always available doesn't mean you're not capable. And I worked very, very hard to prove that, because I'm not always capable. I am the primary caregiver. I am the one that mainly takes care of my kids and my household. But you know what? I've been the top selling agent in a male dominated industry. So I must be doing something right. Doesn't have to be 9 to 5.
Absolutely. I loved your quote from earlier where you said the working 9 to 5 is as outdated as the Dolly Parton song. It's so true. The whole concept of 9 to 5 was designed by men, and of course it doesn't work for women. And
Absolutely.
why not create our own way of working and create it more flexible and a way of working that works for us.
Absolutely. And we've got the technology to do so. I mean, we've all seen through COVID that you can work from home and that you can have that flexibility with what you do. I mean, there are going to be some industries and some instances where a certain time frame needs to be there to answer the phone or, you know, to appear in court or whatever it might be. That's fine. There are going to be situations like that. But there is a whole bunch of people that are working in these hours that really don't need to be.